Let's bring in our guest to discuss. Joining us this hour, national trial attorney Michael Jaafar. Michael, nice to see you. Okay, what did you get from her testimony?
Well, more of the same from the other kids. Obviously, Scott was a much different witness, but for her, you know, saying that their parents' relationship was odd, saying that her mom's story was not lining up, it's a Shakespearean tragedy that the jury is watching, because here are this woman's kids. They look just like her. They're testifying against her for the murder of their father, and one of the kids, the prior witness, Scott, was one of the people that the person she's accusing of committing the murder instead of her. Complete Shakespearean tragedy. I want to see more emotion. If I was her attorney and she was my client, I would be taking her outside in the hallway after the first break of the first day of trial and say, even if you don't believe this, I need you to go in there and cry. Go buy like Visine and put it on your eyes and cry. Feel emotional. Take the pearls off. Take the expensive earrings off. Go in there and be emotional. So she is actually feeding into their the reason I say this and the reason it's relevant is because she's feeding into their testimony. You asked me what I thought about their testimony. Their testimony is bad for the defendant. It's very bad for the defendant. The way that the defendant quells this is by emoting differently, because these are small rooms, right? We're looking at it on TV. It looks like a bigger room than it is. Looks like a conference room. It's not. It's a really small, tiny, intimate room. Those courtrooms they're not built for media cases. They're built decades ago when the media was not involved in these cases. So they are small rooms. The jury, we don't see them on camera. They're sitting probably 5 feet away from her. And so the jury is looking at her. If you ever watch any documentary about any case, people always talk about the physical reaction of jurors upon testimony. Well, the jurors are going to have weeks of this stuff. I can't stand this woman. The jury obviously is not going to stand her. And her case is an eminently reasonable case. You haven't asked me, we'll talk about it later, but there's a big orb of reasonable doubt in the case as to whether or not she did this, but she's covering it up with her courtroom demeanor. And obviously, again, it does not help you that your kids are testifying against you. The defense attorney can argue it later and say, look, anytime a marriage falls apart, kids usually side with one of the parents. That doesn't mean that the parent that they don't side with murdered the other parent. And here's why my client did not murder her husband, right? But it's sad, it's a tragedy that her kids are testifying against her. And one last thing, Kelly, the defense attorney, again, he's more so, his courtroom demeanor and his cadences are more related to like a mob case, not really so much for a case where a family tragedy is unfolding before our eyes. So that's just one thing I want to throw out there. But yeah, I think these witnesses did good.
Emily was on the stand for a considerable amount of time, and you bring up the marriage falling apart, and she brought him up. When the marriage fell apart, it wasn't with the guy that she brought to Emily's wedding, which was a big problem in her mind, but it was with this Ted Riley character here. She is talking about that portion of this saga. You could feel the emotion there, and she even relives that, and that might be carrying over here when they're trying to figure out who killed Dad. It factors in likely. What's your reasonable doubt orb got in it there, Michael?
Massive orb of reasonable doubt that the defense attorney is going to have to basically, his case is going to hang on it. And here's what it is. And I'll say a condensed version of what my closing argument in this case would be. Look, if you have any reasonable doubt as to any element of this crime, you have to acquit my client. The victim weighed 300 or so pounds. He was 6'4". His neck was bigger than normal necks. He was a big guy. My client weighs 120, 130 pounds. I don't know how much you guys weigh, but I weigh 200 pounds. I can assure you I cannot move somebody who's 600 pounds. I cannot move anything that's 600 pounds. The biggest, most strongest Olympic weightlifter can only move twice their body size. So I want to ask you to ask yourself a question when you go into that room. How much do you weigh? And ask yourself if you can move somebody 3 times your size. If any of you say that you cannot move weight, any type of weight that's 3 times your size, you have to acquit my client. If all of you unanimously convict my client, that means all of you are unanimously saying that you can move somebody 3 times your size. And obviously this is a very condensed version. I would be a lot more polite about it. I'd be a lot more inviting about it, but I would have to go down that road, right? Whereas Scott, the other person who also had the means, who also had the motive, who's been dishonest on the stand about his relationship with his father's finances, he did have the ability to move his father's body. My client did not. You must acquit my client unless you believe each one of you can move a weight 3 times your size. And now, again, this is a condensed version. I would spread it out over an hour, but that's what I would have to say. Primacy and recency, I would end with that. because everything else looks bad for your client. Some of this stuff looks like a victim impact statement, the testimony of the kids. It doesn't even, I know it's testimony, but it kind of feels like a victim impact statement. And if you ask 1,000 kids, even as adults, who've seen a parent in an affair with another parent, not one of them would tell you it was okay, I was happy for my mom, or I was happy for my dad. They would all fall apart. It's very sad. It is what it is, but you're the defense attorney. You have to basically lead with your strongest message. And in my opinion, that's your strongest message, really your only message.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. But Cannon Kearney earlier was talking about she's a country woman, and he was talking about his mother, and she was really strong, and so possibly this woman could do it. But I'm with you, Michael. I think that that's really all the defense has to go on in regard to that reasonable doubt.
You know, they lived on a 10-acre piece of property in the Atlanta suburbs. I don't know how much of a country woman. She wasn't bailing.
I agree. She doesn't appear like a country woman.
Yeah. She was a different type of country woman.
Maybe.
She's wearing pearls, Ted. She's wearing pearls.
I know, we talked about that last week. She didn't have them on today, Michael, though.
She listened to us. She listened to our broadcast for her earrings.
Yeah, she has some earrings. All right, Michael, thank you so much. We're going to get in a quick break.